I can't think of something Behavior has fumbled quite as hard as Breakable Walls. They added them to the game and just kind of didn't do anything with them. What seemed like an addition to maps that could really shake up the gameplay and lead to a lot of unique dynamics at loops or tiles just ended up underwhelming and narrowly used. An idea that had a lot of potential but just didn't get the love it needed. It seems like over time we're getting less and less breakable walls, leaving the future of them shaky, to say the least. We have no perks directly tied to breakable walls, they seem to be mysteriously vanishing from some maps, and Behavior has given us no updates on where the future of breakable walls is going. So what's the deal? Why are breakable walls so unused? Will they ever see some sort of love or changes to give them something more to do? Well, give me a little bit of your time today and we'll talk about why breakable walls are so underwhelming and how we might be able to make them not that way. And yes, before anyone says it, I am sick, so if you're noticing my voice is a little different sounding, that's why. I wanted to wait to record this until I wasn't congested, but unfortunately, I just didn't get better. So if my voice sounds a little odd or it sounds like I'm doing a funny voice, it's not on purpose. I'm just, unfortunately, a sick boy today. But don't worry, I'll make sure it doesn't really come across in the video as best I can. And as always, dear viewers, if you have a topic you want me to talk about, make sure to drop it in the little comment section below and I will get to all of them. Usually I try to keep a good eye on the comment section and respond as much as I can, and it kind of gets harder as there's more comments, but I will keep an eye out for any of your suggestions because you guys have some really good suggestions. I already have another video lined up for someone else's video idea, so if you want me to talk about something you're interested in, make sure to tell me what it is. Anyway, let's dive into this topic. Breakable Walls were first dropped back in 2020 with the Chains of Hate chapter, which gave us Deathslinger, Zarina, and of course, Dead Dog Saloon, which is a lot more fun to say when you're congested and can do a deeper voice. Anyway, if you've played on Dead Dog, you may have noticed that there are like a billion breakable walls in that map. There's a bunch in the main building, almost every maze tile on that map has one, there are structures towards the outer walls that have them, and even the shack has a breakable wall punched into it. I guess Behavior was really excited about them being added, which makes the treatment of them all the more disappointing, especially considering just how much potential they really had. I remember people speculating that they would work like killer ambush spots or would work in unique ways with some killer powers, but when they're actually released, well, people were disappointed, to say the least. There were a lot of ideas floating around for how Behavior would implement them, but when they were actually dropped, well, yeah. Players' first reactions to breakable walls kind of shaped how they'd be treated in the rest of their existence. Breakable walls mostly served as pre-drop pallets that the survivors couldn't interact with. They only work with the most pallet-related perks like Alert, Windows of Opportunity, or, on the killer side, Brutal Strength, Fire Up, or my goat, Thwack. Well, it's nice that these perks activate with them, that's about as far as they go for any synergy, other than some odd outliers here and there. Breakable walls, especially on Dead Dog, mostly just make loops stronger for survivors until they're broken by the killer. Once they're gone, the loops they were previously at basically become useless. This extends to breakable walls at main buildings, which are somehow worse. These walls are placed in those structures to create god windows and, when gone, make the building pretty unsafe to run. A couple that come to mind are the walls in Cold Tower, Groaning Storehouse, Suffocation Pit, sometimes, Gas Heaven, Azeroth's Resting Place, Wretched Shop, sometimes, Blood Lodge. You get the idea. While these aren't the biggest deal and are mostly just a slight annoyance that once gone you never have to deal with again, it really makes me think, is this the best Behavior could come up with? I mean, you have a new mechanic that could create a lot of interesting scenarios for different killers, and the best you could come up with is pre-drop pallets? Are you kidding me? Behavior not expanding on this idea and leaving it as the most bare bones, uninteresting, and dull design is such a missed opportunity, man. I'm sure a ton of people in this community could give some really cool ideas for how breakable walls could be expanded on in the future, but Behavior just doesn't seem to want to try, which they very much demonstrated recently. A little bit after the release of Breakable Walls, Behavior began giving visual reworks to a lot of the older maps, except Backwater Swamp for some reason. We're still waiting on that one. These, for the most part, kept a lot of the gameplay the exact same, except for the breakable walls that were added to the main buildings typically. Like I said, these breakable walls didn't expand on the gameplay very much, and just served as a minor annoyance that the killer just had to deal with. There were some interesting ones, like the walls that spawn in the House of Pain on Bad and Preschool, which can show up in a few locations, one of which actually makes the loop weaker for survivors if left unbroken. So the killer can use their game knowledge in a really interesting way. Although most of the time, the walls are pretty necessary to break, so any change to make them a bit more interesting is a W in my book. But that's just one of the only examples I can really think of, which makes me think this choice was just a stroke of luck by Behavior. It really feels like, for most of these maps, Behavior just kind of threw them in without much thought. Although lately it seems like they're walking back on breakable walls completely. A little bit ago, there was a bug on Disturbed Ward where every single breakable wall that could spawn did. This made the main building, which was already very strong by the way, so much stronger. Once Behavior got wind of this, they fixed the problem by Take a guess. A. Actually fixing the issue and having the default breakable walls spawn. B. Making Disturbed Ward a good map. Or C. Removing every single breakable wall on the map. Ding ding ding, I'm sure you got it, it's C. Surprise! Yeah, behavior fixed the issue by just taking all of them out of the map. I think this really goes to show where breakable walls are going to go in the next couple years. The newest maps don't really have any. There's like 2 on Ormond Lake Mine, none on Forgotten Ruins, and none on the newest map, Dead Sands. It's pretty clear that behavior never figured out what to do with them, so I assume we're slowly going to see them vanish over time. It really wouldn't surprise me if behavior released the next patch and announced that they were removing all the breakable walls from every single map in the game. They're probably going to get the same treatment that map variants got, where behavior admits they kind of screwed the pooch and fixed the issue by just cutting it out entirely, like a tumor, which is really a shame considering just how much potential they really had. If breakable walls were expanded on in interesting ways, I think they could have done a lot to make the game feel a bit more interesting. If behavior placed them in locations that allowed for more interesting choices by the killer, giving them the option to break it or not depending on whatever killer they're playing, as we did see with the occasional spot or two, that would have been really fun. It could have greatly expanded on the playstyle diversity that DBD really thrives with. Imagine if there were certain perks that were created with breakable walls in mind. I mean, they wouldn't be very strong at the moment, but if breakable walls were changed to have more interesting gameplay surrounding them, it could have opened up a lot of new perk designs that behavior could create. Sort of like hex perks. Or maybe imagine a scenario where survivors could do side objectives and build breakable walls as a reward for doing them. Or maybe breakable walls could work with other killer powers the same way they work with low pro chains, where certain killer powers could break the walls and hit survivors through them. Opening up new ways of getting awesome clips. Imagine throwing a hatchet through a wall across the map and hitting a survivor on the other side of it, or grabbing a survivor with a Wesker dash through the wall. You get the idea. Would these ideas be balanced and work? Maybe not, but at least it's something. I'm trying. At least I'm trying more than behavior did. I honestly expect breakable walls not to last much longer, or at least to keep their position as just not really being worth anything. It's really a shame. I hate to see an idea that has a lot of potential wasted because behavior isn't really trying to expand on the idea in an interesting way. It's kind of what they've done with boon perks, which I'll get around to in a different video at some point, don't worry, where the basic concept is really cool, but it ends up just getting sidelined because behavior doesn't really want to try to make it work. In the end, it gets added to the pile of things that could have been really healthy for the game if behavior had continued development for it instead of just sidelining it the second the community was critical of the idea. I mean, at least it got further than most things by actually getting added to the game. Some things get a small showcase on the PTB, and then instead of behavior trying to fix the issues it has, they just remove it and decide to waste all the time they spend working on it. Except for nerfing killers that don't need nerf like Hillbilly. Those they keep for some reason. Do I think behavior will give breakable walls another look and change how they work, or at least expand on it somehow? No, probably not. I would be overjoyed to see that, but I just don't expect that to happen. It's so disappointing. They really could have made things work, but they just decided not to really try. I think adding, or at least considering some of the ideas I gave, would have at least pushed them in a better direction, but now, ugh. I don't really see any sort of bright future for breakable walls, and if map variants are anything to go by, they'll eventually just vanish, and you'll see it in some sort of DBD secret facts video where they talk about, hey, do you remember that breakable walls were in the game? It's just kind of sad. I mean, it's more likely that they'll just stay the way they are and live in this state of limbo for the rest of DBD's probably long lifespan. If it were up to me, I would make sure that breakable walls were at least placed in positions that allowed them to be a little more interesting, but it isn't in my hands. But what about you guys? If you were to make any changes to breakable walls to make them a bit more interesting to use, what would you do? Would you make perks that work with them, give them unique interactions with killer powers? Let me know in the comments. I'm interested to see what ideas you guys have. But that's it for me, gamers. Have a great day.